episode of Black and Dating in Salt Lake City. Today we have Courtney and Amber. Thank you both for joining me today.
Of course, thank
Yes.
you.
So today's episode is New City, New Me. So I wanted to first ask, we're going to start with you, Amber. How long have you been out here in Salt Lake City?
4 years this year.
From where?
So I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
But I went to law school originally in Texas. I was in Houston for a year, and then I went from Houston to Salt Lake City.
Okay, nice. And then what about you, Courtney?
I'm originally from Georgia, but I moved here from Texas after grad school.
Okay, and how long have you been out here?
I've been here for 4 years.
4 years.
Almost.
Must be the lucky number. Okay, so
That's probably why we're such good friends.
Yeah, we've
We've
been
been
here the
here
same amount of time.
same amount of
Yeah.
time. Where did y'all meet?
Was
I
it?
don't know what technically we met, but this is how I think of it. I just kept seeing Amber around.
Okay.
And we had a mutual friend that was like moving away, and she was like, all right, y'all be friends now, because she was leaving us. So we were like, okay. And then we just hit it off. So
That's cool. I love it. So this is the first time we've ever had friends on the show. So, and I assume that y'all have had like lots of conversations about dating out here and all that good stuff. And so I'm from Detroit. And so the dating scene was very different back home. And like, I kind of felt like when I moved out here, my approach, I could just be like a new Demita in a way, and like how I approach men. So I'm curious, have you decided to move a little bit differently in the dating scene here because the ratio is what it is? Like, do you feel like you have to alter your game a little bit? And have you had to do that?
So when I first moved out here, I definitely felt like I had the juice, and then I was just like, well, maybe I don't have any game at all. But I think it was more so kind of like a phase in my life type of deal versus a location.
Okay.
So being in Utah was my first time like being in the adult world. So not being in school, not dating other people that were also in school, like not having someone in my classes. So it was like, all right, Courtney, you have to actually leave your home if you're gonna meet people. And so I felt like my approach was definitely switching from, quantity to quality, because when I was in college, like it was just like, oh, okay, I want to go on dates, I want to have fun, like whoever's paying attention to me. And when I moved out here, it was more so like, okay, who's someone that I can actually like be with like long term that kind of fits the lifestyle that I see for myself now that I'm a professional and I'm not in school. So I guess like changing my focus and priorities is what happened.
Okay, what about you?
So my experience is just a little bit different because when I came out here, I was still in law school. So for me, I did have to change my dating experience a little bit, because when I was in Houston, I would meet people at school all the time, or like I would meet people who would introduce me to other people, because that's usually how school works.
Okay.
Like you just end up building these networks, and then it's like, oh, you should meet this person or whatever, because everyone is in the same class.
Right.
You're in the same setting, like you're around a lot of people who are like-minded, who think like you, right? And then I got here, and even though I was still in law school here, it was slightly different. Utah, people get married really young and really early, so a lot of people in my law school class are already married anyways, and so even then, it's like your friends who you would go out with, like my friends I would go out with in Houston, I didn't really have friends I would go out with who would be like, oh, I think you should meet this person and that person. Like we weren't living, like I wasn't meeting people in school who had the similar lifestyle as I did. So I had to start figuring out how to meet people outside of my daily circles.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say I never did dating apps, but I would do it very, very rarely. Like I did not like dating apps. I did not like meeting people online.
Which ones were you on?
So I was on like Tinder like a long time ago, and then I had stopped being on Tinder because it was awkward. But then it
is awkward though.
It's awkward.
And there be some creeps on there.
So the way I think about it is like when Tinder first started, like I'm sure they had good intentions, but Tinder is for the hoes. Like Tinder is not for people that are like looking for something serious, substantial, and that's probably why you were getting like a lot of weirdos. Because that's been my experience too.
Yes, and it was so, you know how I first got into Tinder was literally when I was studying abroad in France. So that was the last time. When I got back home, I was like, I'm not doing Tinder again. So I didn't do Tinder, and I when I studied, got into law school, went to Houston, then came here, and then my friends said the same thing here. Girl, you need to just get on some dating apps. And so I did it for a little bit, but even then it was still kind of, it was pushing me outside of my comfort zone a little bit, which is fine because I think being in Utah and Salt Lake City was all about pushing me out of my comfort zone.
Facts.
So
I agree.
yeah, so I had to change it up a little bit. So dating apps, forcing myself to go out more. So I mean, even like our mutual friend, like she'd be like, Amber, you should go out, like, come out with us. And I'm like, no, because I'm not really like I don't like going to the clubs a lot. But I've learned that, you know, if you want to meet someone and
it's about being available, presenting
yes,
like being
putting
out
yourself
there.
out there a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that too, about putting myself out there and being a little more visible for the people I want to meet.
Yeah.
So that was.
To that point though, like, do you feel like the quality, what's your assessment of the quality of men out
it's
here?
like
The quality of
slim
black men.
pickings. And so I talk about dating apps. So before I moved here, I felt like I was pretty successful on dating apps. So I did have a boyfriend when I first moved here. I met him on Bumble, and then my boyfriend before him, I met him on Tinder. And so I was just like, okay, like this
That's
is
2 for 2.
right, like this is a viable means for me to like meet someone. And so when I got out here, it was just like I got swiped about 30 times to get to somebody. And then, you know, I'm open to other races, but I want black love. So like with Tinder, because there's so few black men, you really swiping through about 50 people before you even see a black man. And then he's probably like, I don't want to say something is wrong with him, but it doesn't seem like we would be compatible. So it's just like, all right, on to the next, another 50 people I got to get through. So then I was like, well, maybe Bumble again. I don't really like starting the conversation first, but then that kind of also seemed like there was a particular type of person in Utah that would be on Bumble, but it wasn't really well suited to me.
Okay.
And then like I tried Hinge and I was like, okay, cool. I met somebody on Hinge, so I was like, maybe I'm 3 for 3, you know, I'm doing pretty good. But it got to the point where I got basically like fatigued because I'm like, I keep interacting with people and it feels like an interview. Like it doesn't feel like I'm organically like feeding off your energy and getting to know you. Like I'm just having these microwave conversations until we both feel we want to meet each other in person. And then it was just like first date after first date after first date, just not hitting it off. And I felt for a long time that like maybe something was wrong with me because like I couldn't connect with someone here. But then I realized that it was just a difference in like life paths and hobbies. Like people here in Utah are very outdoorsy.
They are.
And I realized the other day why. So I'm from South Georgia, and so the outdoors to me means mosquitoes, bugs, heat. I'm sweating.
Humid.
Yeah, like it's not a fun time, but there's no bugs here. It's not hot. So if you grew up in a pleasant outdoors environment,
And there's a scenery out here.
you're gonna always want to be
Yeah,
outdoors.
that's true.
Versus if you grew up like in the South, sweating about
Or
to
the
pass
Midwest,
out.
like we did. We don't have like a lot of scenery. You go
so
to
it's
the Great
fine.
Lakes,
It's
and that's
different,
it.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like we really couldn't connect on, you know, mutual interests or activities or even paths. You know, kind of like Amber mentioned, they get married so soon here. And I'm just like, well, I want to meet someone and have a long-term relationship, but I'm not in a rush to get married. They're trying to get married like 3-6 months from now. So I'm like,
Ooh, the black men though? The black men want to get married 3 to 6.
if they
Girl.
are Mormon.
Okay. So
and that's
you've met
another
black
thing.
Mormon
Yes,
men out
I
here.
have. One guy I dated, he was Mormon, and he was really like, oh, Courtney, like, we're going to be black love. We're going to be great. We're going to be whatever. And I was just like, you know, I think you are in love with the idea of being with a black woman. But every time
Not
I
in love
speak
with
to
you?
yeah,
Is
not
that
even just in love with me, but this idea of what you think a black woman is like, but I'm speaking to you and I could tell that maybe you actually haven't interacted with that many black women.
Interesting.
Yeah, like he said something to me one time on a date where he was like, oh, you black girls, see that already kind of caught me. You black girls, he was like, you black girls can't just go to sleep at night. And I was just like, what are you talking about? He's like, right, I'm confused. He's like, you always got to put your little hair products in and tie your head up and put your scarf on. You just can't go to sleep at night. And I'm like, do you not also put something in your head? Maybe that's why your hair is dry, like, cause you not putting a do-rag or nothing on, like, you know, you just going to sleep at night. But like stuff like that, or like, oh, you black girls are always so sassy, I love it. And I'm just like,
Okay, so let me Go ahead.
And it's interesting because piggybacking off of what you said about being tired from dating, for me, I wasn't necessarily tired by doing the first dates over and over. It was getting into the serious relationships over and over. That's what essentially tired me out. Like, I haven't touched a dating app, I don't know, in like 6-7 months now.
Yeah.
Because I was just tired of just connecting with someone and then that connection just breaking.
Yeah.
And then that connection just breaking. And I just wasn't used to that. Like, yeah, I'm single, so I've been through breakups, of course, right?
Yeah.
But not to the extent and to the pace that it was. It was like people would want to fall in love really fast.
Yes.
And then when you're like, okay, I'm gonna give this a chance. Like, I'm gonna really just put myself out there and see where this goes. And then like 3 months later, it's just.
So why do you think that was the case? Do you think it was because, going back to this whole ratio, like there being a lot of options out here in terms of a black man having the pick of the litter when it comes to women?
It's actually the opposite. I think because, especially kind of depending on where they're from, and if you have black men that only prefer black women, they feel like they got to pounce on you and kind of lock it down because they haven't met someone they like for like 6, 3, however many months. And so they're all in, head in, ready. They're so excited for you. And then, if you're a little bit more cautious, because I'm kind of like Amber too, like I kind of like to take my time, get to know you before I really, get all in. Yeah. So it's like once I start investing, I'm like, all right, I'm here for it. They start like falling back, or like they want to, slow down a little bit. And I think it's because they were just so excited to meet a black woman that they like, because we're not everywhere. They were just so excited. And then that enthusiasm fades. It's like a, quick flame that just dies out. And then it's just like, man, here's another like temporary person in my life that I was really invested in, thought we were going to go somewhere. And now this is just another person that I don't even talk to anymore.
So what's been your experience then with that?
So I think for me, and we've also like talked about this in like our like girl group sessions, where there's also this one component, because I think there's different reasons. Like in every relationship for me, I'm like, there's different reasons why that particular person didn't work out. Like one, I mean, it could just be because we are just two different people, or two, they have their own trauma issues that they haven't really worked through. Or 3, one thing we've talked about before is that sometimes, a lot of times, black men particularly, but I mean in general, I feel like Utah is where a lot of people are they transit, like they come in temporarily and they leave. Yeah. And so another part of my dating experience has been like, some guys, I'm just about to leave. Like, I'm here and, you seem cool and let's talk, let's go out on some dates. Like, I just want someone to hang out with while I'm here, and then I peace out. Or, we've talked about situations.
Yeah, that's hurtful.
We'll get into
situations like that, where I thought me and this guy were like really like connected, had a potential, and then it became clear, like in his mind, not only did he know he was gonna leave, he knew the person he was gonna be with, he was gonna meet her in his next spot, because that's where he was going to
settle down
more permanently. And I've seen that a couple times with like
know
guys
that? Did he tell you that up front?
I wouldn't say he said it explicitly, but things he would say and kind of how he would talk about moving, I was just like, okay, this is clear.
It wasn't a we conversation. It was an
I. Yeah, and I feel like I kind of had the opposite, where I thought, I moved out here for my career, and if I met someone, then we would decide like our next move together. Or kind of the field I work in is not as tied to a location as some other fields. So it's just like, if he got an opportunity somewhere, I would move with him too if we were solid. A metaphor I kind of used was, I wanted to meet my man and pack him up like a carry-on and take him with me. Girl. Because I do not tie like love and like bonds and relationships to locations.
Right.
Like, places are places, if we are solid and we are together and we want to be together, we can live wherever. Like, I don't really care. But I've met guys here that just feel like, what is the point of getting super invested with someone when they're going to leave, and they don't really think of it as leaving together. It's a very like singular path. But I also think that's just with men in general. Like, they kind of live their lives until they're ready to like settle down, and then they go out and find someone. And I feel like, well, for me and some women, it's like we live our lives and we are open to like meeting our partner as we continue to live our lives, versus men feel like they have to get to this point
and then make that decision.
Yeah, and women are more so like, in whatever point of this path that I meet someone, then they can continue on with me, or we can diverge onto a shared path. But it's not kind of like that same. So with them being so transit minded, it's just like, what's the point?
Yeah. And a part of me, and I think this is the hopeless romantic in me, honestly. I truly believe that when a man finds someone, then they'll change that mindset. But maybe it's just like, okay, I have to get to the point where that man wasn't for me, and he didn't see me in that position,
right?
And so maybe that's why he didn't make that decision. But I don't know. I mean, it's interesting.
I agree with you. Like, I feel like when someone really wants to be with you, they'll make it work, because the guy I was dating prior to moving here, like, he did want me to stay in Texas, but I couldn't find a job in Texas, so I ended up taking a job out here. And when I decided to move out here, because he was like, well, like, I'll take care of you until you find a job in Texas. Like, it's fine. You don't have to leave. But I was like, no, I feel like this will be a great opportunity for me. His whole mindset switched to like, you know what? I'll come to Utah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and just knowing that type of commitment to wherever like my dreams or goals takes me is possible, and I would give that same level of commitment to someone else.
Girl, that was your carry-on man.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Excuse me.
I feel like there's another part to that story.
But I am thankful for that experience, because to have someone that loved me the way he did, I know that is possible.
Exactly.
And I know that I need someone that has a mindset like me, that I'm not tied to locations, because even when I met guys that lived in Utah, kind of the opposite of the transit, I met guys that wanted to live and die in Utah. And I was just like, oh no, baby, like this
ain't
is
gonna work.
This is a temporary location, and I always feel like I will go where God leads me and the opportunities present. So I need to know that I'm with someone that if I got an amazing opportunity, or they got an amazing opportunity, they would not turn it down or want me to turn it down because they want to stay.
Let me ask this question. So it's both been 4 years for the both of y'all. And it sounds like this place is not your forever home, at least for you. Is this your forever home? Ooh. Or even if you're undecided, right?
Right now I have to say that I am undecided, particularly because of what I do in my career and everything. So I am undecided. I can easily say that.
Because my question is, as it relates to all of this, is if you are not able to find a partner, so it's been 4 years, when do you say, you know what, Utah, it's been great, but like I'm moving into a direction where maybe whatever that next step is, like being in a long-term serious relationship, or if it is getting married or having children, like, is your perspective or relationship with Utah tied up in, am I gonna be able to find a partner?
It definitely is.
Yeah, like, so for me, part of that for me is that if I, like, with my career, if I find somebody here that is like my person, it would probably change my mindset about being undecided, really, truly, because I mean, I'll be 33 this year, and for me, like, my family, like my actual blood family lives all the way in Ohio, so I don't have anyone here that I could just
anchors you,
and I could just talk to at night and things like that. And I'm just like, and I was just having this conversation with my mom. I'm like, Mom, I just don't have anyone when I go home at night. So I know, like, if I could find somebody, then it'll probably really change my perception about how long I end up staying in Utah. Like, it really would. But I will say, because I am like getting to my mid-30s, it's hard to say, but I'm proud to say it, because I think 30s is a good age. But the more I get there, that's where my mindset is shifting. It's no longer like when I moved here, I was 27.
It's different.
Yeah. So I was in a different mindset. To me, I was like, oh, I'm not. I
got time.
I wasn't thinking about marriage. My main goal was to graduate and get a job and to be successful in my career.
Right.
So now that I'm getting older, I just don't. I desire to have a family. I desire to get married, and so at some point I am going to have to sit down and really evaluate that and see if that can even be possible in Utah. And then if not, then I will have to just figure out if I need to pivot or do something different here or change what I want in my overall lifestyle. But for right now, that's where I am. A little undecided, but still open.
Okay.
A little optimistic, I think. But
As you should be. What about you, Courtney?
For me, it would take some kind of man. I mean, some kind of man doing something in Utah that it is like he has to be here.
Okay.
Because I feel even outside of dating, me being in Utah long term is not the healthiest for me long term. Kind of similar to Amber, like my family lives all the way in Georgia. It's like, yes, I have friends and people I consider like my family here, but when I go home, it's me. When I want to like hang out with my family, I'm having to go home for a month and 2 months at a time. Like I'm missing family events and things like that. So not only do I want to be close to my family, I want to be closer to people that look like me. You know? So I feel that at a certain point, I kind of gave up on meeting someone in Utah. Not to the point where I don't think it's possible. But it's just not something I even think about. It's kind of like, oh, if it happens, it happens, versus I felt like I was a little bit more intentional earlier and really putting effort into dating and trying to, you know, meet someone and better myself to be like a good person in a relationship with someone. But at this point, I feel like I'm just making decisions independent of if I meet someone or not. And if they come along this path of my independent decisions, I am. And my family and friends kind of joke. They're like, Courtney, you must not want to meet a man because you keep moving with a man or not. And because I used to live in a small town in Texas, and then I moved out here, and they were like, girl, you got to go to where the men are. And they keep telling me, like, 30 days. Like, as soon as you move out of Utah, 30 days, I promise they're going to snatch you up. And anytime I'm like, man, why don't I have a man? What's wrong with me? I'm like, it's not you, girl. It's Utah.
You
like,
know,
the
what's
location
interesting is that I meet so many black women who say that here, and and it hurts my heart hearing that, because I meet the most beautiful black women,
so dynamic,
and I'll sit there and I'll talk to them, not just beautiful, like
smart,
intelligent, but like you know, really smart, great jobs, great careers, just awesome, amazing, beautiful people to sit down and talk to, and they will all say the same thing. They will say, Amber, at some point I got to my dating life, I said, what's wrong with me? And I never, like, you know, interacting and hearing someone say that, I'm like, I've never heard that before.
Wow.
Ever from my friend groups.
I never felt that before until I moved here, because I still think very highly of myself, but I was like, maybe I don't have anything to offer someone in a romantic relationship. Like, what is going on?
That is terrible.
But I mean, I don't think that way anymore. I think what happened was that I felt like I was just striking out so often, but also on the flip side, you don't get that many at-bats in Utah, especially if you're like me, because Amber knows I'm very picky. Like, to the point, I have a thing about hands. Like, your hands,
if your nails is dirty,
not even like that. Like, I need a nice, strong, manly hand. Like, I stopped talking to somebody because his hands were too like delicate. And, like, I didn't like that. Like, I held his hand, I was like, ooh. So it's like I'm already not getting that. So I'm already not getting that many at bats. You know. So and I'm striking out, and I'm just like, well, like, what's going on? Or I would just feel like I was connected with someone. I was fully accepting them for who they were, and they weren't really accepting me.
You for who you were.
And so doing music and being a rapper, sometimes that's been held against me, and where they're like, well, you know, I don't really want someone that's doing all of
out
that.
in the limelight.
Yeah, or like not even just, they think I'm up to no good because they think I'm like a city girl, and if I'm at the studio late at night, I'm cheating on them and all of that. But I realized that here in Utah, there's a lot of black men that are insecure. And there are a lot of them,
I think
because
there's a
just
lot
like
of men
Amber,
in general.
Yeah, in general. But
like
also think the black male population in Utah is already not that big. And
Facts.
there's out of that small population, there's a good proportion of them that are insecure. So then that further limits how many you have, and then you have the ones that don't really prefer black women. So again, you're getting even smaller in your options. But I feel like just what Amber said, there's so many amazing black women here that are killing it and crushing it, and then you kind of get black men that, you know, moved out here to take a chance. They're trying to establish themselves. They don't quite feel established. and they feel like they're not really up to, you know, par with the black women, and that can really change how they treat black women when they feel like they are not.
Because I will say, just in general, I had a real like heartbreaking conversation with my mom. I was like, I don't think I've ever been treated the way that I've been treated here in Utah in my dating life. Like in a way where it's like, just even how like people break up with me, it's just really, really borderline disrespectful. In a sense, I was like, I don't think I've ever experienced it like this before. Like not in my teens, not in my 20s. Like I've had situations where it got rough. I had situations where I probably wasn't the greatest either in the relationship. I've had situations where I had to break up the relationship, but I'm saying like, just situations that have happened, I was like, I don't know what it is about. I'm like, maybe, I don't know if it's Utah, or I don't know if it's just in general, but I'm like, I've never experienced a lot of this. And even one of my friends told me, they were like, what you've been through has been traumatizing. Like, and my friends who have dated elsewhere, they'll call me, they'll tell me like, no. Never.
Right.
Like never have I experienced that before.
But let me ask y'all ladies this, because I also want to, I think a part of this is to help equip women who are making the transition out here. So like, what is a tip? Like one tip that you would tell a woman that's relocating out here for work in terms of the dating scene?
I would say put that man in the context of where you used to live. Because a lot of times when you move out of Utah, especially for me, because it is, you know, slim pickings, it's not a lot, you can turn a blind eye to a lot of things, or he can seem better than he really is, because in comparison to what is out here, or, you know, in comparison to, well, it's either him or this
or
one,
nothing.
Yeah, you can be a little bit more accommodating, a little bit more open, and you're like, okay, well, he's not that bad. So sometimes I have to ask myself, would I date him if I still lived in Texas and there was other options and men? Like, would he still have my attention if I was somewhere else? And then another thing I kind of think about is like, do I really miss him? Or do I miss having someone? Would I be okay if it was somebody else, or does it have to be him? And if it has to be him, then okay, you probably have a real like connection. But if you would be fine if somebody else popped up and came into your life, then you doing too much turning of a blind eye. But that's what a tip I would say is, put him in the context of either where you lived before or what you would normally do, but take him outside of the bubble of Utah, because I think sometimes we get so insulated in here.
Get a true assessment of that man.
Because I seem like, I told my friends some of this stuff and they'd be like, girl. And even my friends would be like, Courtney, please remember who you are and who you were before you moved to Utah. Because you would never
tolerate this.
Right.
And what about you?
I think for me, I had to really change my dating preferences a lot, and be a little more open-minded, but also.
In what way?
Just in general, like, you know, I'm decided, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna date outside my race. I'm gonna do different things. I'm gonna go do more outdoor stuff. I'm gonna be open to a lot more things that people who are in the dating pool here are more open to kind of open up the opportunities and the options that I have. Because I mean, honestly, let's be real, I'm 33, so my options are really different than anyone in their 20s. Like I'm dating people who've probably already been married already. So I have to like really change my mindset. So I think that as anyone, whenever you have to change your dating pool, or whenever you're entering a different phase in life, whether it is like you moving to a different city, or you are, you know, changing age groups, or changing like career paths or things like that, whenever you're changing something about your life, sometimes you just have to change how you see the man that's going to enter into your life, if that's where you desire to be for a period of time, right? So I think just being a little more open-minded for me, but also journaling, because sometimes I have to journal, like Courtney said, to remind myself who I am. So that way when I am expanding my horizons a little bit, I still keep in the back of my mind what type of man I want. what type of personality traits I love, what type of things that I want to have long term. But at the same time, I'm not compromising who I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the key thing, because regardless of it's here in Utah or anywhere else, the worst thing you can ever do is get yourself lost
Girl.
in a man or in a
Amen to
relationship.
that.
Yep.
Amen to
So
that.
you
Out of
and
desperation for
Right.
wanting to have somebody.
Right. So I just want someone to come into my life who compliments me regardless of where I am, because I'm like, I don't want to leave Utah and then just be in this same like mindset of, oh, I just really want to find something. No, because
Yeah.
whoever comes into my life they're gonna have to compliment me. Like it's
100%.
not,
Yeah.
it's no compromise.
That's a
after that.
non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At a certain point for a while, I found that I was actually less happy the more open-minded I was being, and that I had to remind myself that I actually knew what type of man I was wanting.
Yeah.
All this experiment I was doing was actually to find a man I was willing to settle for.
Yeah.
So like, if you're opening yourself up to different things, like just calibrate and journal, that'll help too. Like, how do you feel when you are open to dating a person? Like, do you still feel like yourself or do you not? Like, for example, for me, I tried to be more open to men that already had children, and I noticed that that was causing me to be a little bit more irritable, a little bit more like overthinking.
Feeling like you're sharing your time.
Yeah.
your
And then I
wisdom.
just realized that, like, no, I need more attention and like affirmation than a person with children can provide. So that's actually doing me a disservice and them a disservice for me to be open to that. So now I'm a little bit more just like, you're great, but I don't really date people with children.
Yeah.
So
Well, ladies, I want to thank y'all for this really open and honest conversation.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate y'all just, I don't know, keeping it real. Because
Yeah.
I think oftentimes before I moved out here, there wasn't a whole lot of information on YouTube or on Google about what it actually is like for dating out here. So I think particularly for the woman's perspective. So I appreciate it. Thank
And
you.
it can be difficult, but you know, I think that anywhere, I mean, you
gonna
make
have
it
its
what it
challenges.
is.
yeah, anywhere. And
Yeah.
I would say even in Utah, like, just find things that you like to do as an individual, and you will naturally like meet like-minded people or a man
And
through
find
that.
the people, yeah.
Find your
Yeah,
tribe.
find your
Yeah.
tribe.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we know a lot of people who found their person
Yeah.
in Utah, and then they left Utah, but,
Yeah, but they found it.
but they found
found
them
it,
here.
you know.
So I mean, there are those stories of like,
possible.
and that's where I say I'm like cautiously optimistic here, because I've seen it happen, and I know it can happen. So I'm not gonna just like take that out.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you for tuning in to today's episode for Black and Dating in Salt Lake City. New city, new me. And shout out to Amber and Courtney for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.